This video is sponsored by nobody. Nobody sponsored this video. So please like, subscribe, and comment.
Nobody.
Funny because I've been unboxing all this stuff and I've been concerned on whether or not there was something in there, and now I'm concerned on whether or not there's something in here because it's just crazy light. Look at that. Apple do love their fingerprints. Okay, no, but in all seriousness, since I've gotten the iPads early, I was thinking instead of rushing a video where I unbox it and we take the first look, why don't I just unbox it now, look at it quickly, and then spend a whole week with the iPad, and I'll replace my MacBook Air with it. I think that's a better idea. Either way, MKBHD is gonna beat me to it, so might as well just do this. Right after we actually unbox this and take a look at it, I think what we're gonna do though is that we're gonna start with the iPad. Out of all things, I think that makes sense. So right here we have iPad Pro 13-inch M4 Wi-Fi cellular, 1 terabyte. We'll talk about what that means later on. Let's get to this. Let's take a look at this, open this up. It's funny because during our first looks with these iPads, oh my God, this thing was so thin, and it is so thin. It's incredible. Like, I don't know, it's kind of wild to me. Look at this. Very, very, very nice. Just extremely thin. I mean, just look at this. It's like a sheet. That's so crazy. As for the setup guides, it's always the same thing, I believe. Just no stickers this time. Setup guides, and probably Spanish, French, and English, and the warranty. So that's the usual stuff. And like always, I do appreciate Apple for listening to us because the USB-C to USB-C cable, braided, now has matching tips. So that's nice. But look how much cleaner this actually looks. You just, you know, so much better. I like it compared to this. It just didn't make sense. And then we've got the 20-watt charging brick. So that's it for iPad Pro. When it comes to Apple Pencil Pro, I mean, we all knew this was eventually gonna happen. You know, the funny thing is that when I saw this, I didn't think it was gonna work with the iPad Air M2, but it does. Now I'm thinking if it's going to be properly backwards compatible, which I don't know, I would hope so at some point. And funny enough, believe it or not, this was actually my favorite announcement for iPad, which is cool. Funny enough, like the actual pen, even though it's changed the internals, it doesn't really feel any different in hand. Bit of a disastrous unboxing, but yeah, very nice, just like the Gen 2. Now let's move into the most expensive keyboard ever. That's a joke, but very expensive. The Magic Keyboard. I hope you guys like these unboxings. I feel like they're relaxing to do, and we can just talk a bit about it. This is always the most satisfying thing ever. So this here is the new Magic Keyboard. If we forget about pricing just for a second, like engineering wise, this thing is very, very nice, okay? Let me just show you guys quickly. Probably is better we open it this way. Here we go. Look at that. It's very, very nice. It's a very nice keyboard. I'm not gonna lie. Price is just, you know how it is. So this is it. This is what I wanna use as a replacement for my 15-inch MacBook Air. I think it'll be perfect. So yeah, I mean, last Friday after unboxing it, I ended up setting this whole thing up. I practically backed up everything from my M1 Air and transferred everything in here. You know what? It's been a while since we've gotten iPads, right? I kind of like that. The last iPad Pro was released in October 18th, 2022, and this latest one now a few days ago, that being May 7th, 2024, I feel like it's given Apple plenty of time to think this one through, to not only re-engineer it, but also make it thinner, which was my biggest concern. I remember asking during our first look how the structural integrity of this chassis has now evolved. You see, this not only is the thinnest Apple product yet, but it's also their first device that offers a nano texture glass. And be careful, because that isn't meant to replace something like paper-like. It's not like a sheet that delivers a different feel to your writing experience. It's a sheet that first and foremost delivers less glare and reduces fingerprints at the cost of slight reduction in contrast and sharpness within the image. And so not only does this provide that, but more performance with M4, the same battery life as the older model regardless of it now being thinner, and it now also comes with a tandem OLED screen. They call it the Ultra Retina XDR display, which from what I know makes it the only commercial available OLED screen that uses two different OLED displays stacked on top of each other. And so it allows the new display driver on the M4 to output more nits at 1000 nits full screen brightness for SDR and HDR content, and up to 1600 nits peak brightness in full HDR. What's concerning about OLED finally arriving into iPad is burn-in. OLED burn-in occurs when static images are displayed for an extended period of time, causing some pixels to age faster, and they leave like these faint remnants of those images on screen. To prevent that though, when I asked the question, I was told that a very similar iPhone OLED burn-in prevention technique was used for iPad. Apple have this like insane complicated algorithm within the OS that's used to monitor the usage of individual pixels to produce display calibration data. So in short, the technique allows for burn-in to basically not be a concern. I think the only true concern I personally have is how thin this is, coming in at 5.1 millimeters for this 13-inch and 5.3 millimeters for the 11-inch. Engineering wise, this is very, very impressive, but it's just so concerningly thin. I remember them telling us that even the magnetic charger had to be redesigned to fit this new thickness, which turns out to be one of the reasons as to why the Apple Pencil Pro is not backwards compatible. Or at least that's what they told us, because they had to redesign the magnet within this pen itself as well. So yeah. Overall though, they did tell us that the structural integrity within this design outputs the same efficiency and performance as last gens, which is pretty damn crazy. Like hold it like that.
What?
That's crazy, huh?
Scares me, bro.
Yeah.
It's a tablet that it indeed feels crazy to hold and feels light at around 1.28 pounds depending on the model you are holding. Of course, with that, we've been stripped away from the ultra-wide camera, although gained a horizontal camera. However, we now have video recording limitations with a single NAND, which the 256GB model now delivers. And the limitations actually continue with the base model. In fact, it continues to extend all the way to the 512 model, with it only offering up to 8GB of RAM. If you want the full 16 gigs, you do have to at least opt for the 1TB model. What's new though is that the difference between the 8GB and the 16GB model removes a performance score from the CPU when you opt for the lower RAM tier. And this is regardless of which size you do end up going with. So when you are shopping, keep that in mind, as it truly reflects on prices that have gone up by $200 respectively. The iPad 11-inch now starts at $999 and the 13-inch at $1,299. Thankfully though, unlike in the past, both models now deliver the exact same performance and features, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. So on paper, that's iPad Pro for you, but in practice, here's how my week went. My week made me realize that the big question we should all ask ourselves when trying to make this transition is, can the iPad replace your computer? I think for myself, this is genuinely the very first time that as a whole this feels like a laptop. And I'm talking about hardware wise. After spending a lot of money on their new Magic Keyboard, the new Function Pro has given me the appeal that I'm one step closer to indeed using a laptop. It's now got a bigger trackpad, which has been making me feel like I'm using a laptop keyboard. The keys along with it complement that to deliver a very similar MacBook-like experience, and the fact this new metal material seems to be picking up just as much fingerprints as a MacBook just really is the cherry on top for me. I did ask, it's not the same anodized aluminum they use on the MacBooks, but it's very similar. It does have a new 60-watt USB-C port now delivering faster charging times, and to plug in other things, especially data transfer related, you simply use the Thunderbolt port on the iPad itself. Tuesday was the day I realized that the whole keyboard just translates so well from their Macs. You've got proper clicks with a very similar haptic feedback, gestures like opening the app switcher, switching between apps, going home, secondary clicks, and even things like command and spacebar to toggle the spotlight. Within its laptop-like form factor, I've gotta say it's been sturdy. A lot more than what I was expecting, considering that the iPad is not only 5.1mm thick, but also the Magic Keyboard is almost paper sheet sized. Never did I once experience some weird flex when holding it by its corner, or never did I ever felt like the hinge was about to give up on me and develop any further problems. Like as a whole, and as ridiculous the pricing is for a setup like this, opening this up and diving into work right away does feel like I'm grabbing a laptop for work.
I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but I feel like some people might care about this. For the past few days, I feel like, I don't know, opening the iPad with one hand is a lot more difficult. I don't know if it's because I'm using the 13-inch that it makes it tougher, or the fact that it's slimmer, but it's just way harder. You need like two hands. Two hands is fine. Also, just a little dumb point to point out as well, when you open it with two hands, just make sure you rotate the hinge completely back before you start rotating the iPad, or else it'll start rubbing metal to metal a tiny bit.
Later on that day, Zolotech on Twitter made me realize iPadOS 17.5 was out, so I decided to do the update when I got to the office that morning and update the iPad accordingly. Not that it would change anything for me, because up until that point, I hadn't encountered any sort of bugs. Anyways, Tuesday, I ended up my day by using it for the voiceover regarding our GT3 video coming up next week. Look, aside from maybe possibly encountering some burn-in at some point, I think the only scares I've had with this past week was losing my Apple Pen. With the iPad now thinner and the magnet redesign, by Wednesday, I was starting to feel like the pen doesn't sit as firm as it previously did. Like leaning the tablet on my hip like I do with my computers makes me kind of scared to lose the pen. It made me overall not feel as confident when it comes to treating it the same way I do with the MacBook Air. Throwing it in my backseat, my backpack, leaving it around the house. I've had a few moments where rolling the pen forward made it come off the magnet, and it really doesn't take that much for that to happen. Although I feel like Apple tried to counter that by finally adding the ability to track this pen through Find My. I do remember during my time in New York, the questions I frequently asked the most were pen related. The 4-space barrel sensor allows you to squeeze it, delivering some haptic feedback to you, and pops out a little menu of options you can use depending on the app you are in. With that in mind, we've been planning out our next makeover project for a friend of ours that's moving into a new condo, so having new features as someone that has extensively used the pen in the past is so awesome to see. I think it was Tuesday, but Tuesday was the very first time I gave the pen a proper try. Through Wednesday, I worked a bit more on planning this makeover, but this is where iPad really becomes alive in my opinion. This time around, Apple Pencil Pro just tries to go a bit beyond to give you quick access tools. It tries to make your writing experience a lot more accessible and easier, and their new Pen API, which is available to developers to code with, really showcases the upgrades this comes with. Added to that, the pen also has a gyroscope. I'm not an artist, but if you are, the gyroscope allows you to adjust the orientation of your brushes by rotating the pencil in your fingers. So it's the closest thing digitally with an iPad that can simulate your art tools. Never once used it during my week, but yeah, it's good to know. I think the people that will enjoy this the most would be the artists. When it comes to Apple Pen, I've realized with time that other than graphically planning spaces and desk setups, for me, the pen doesn't serve me much use anymore as it used to. Yes, sometimes I do feel like writing quick notes somewhere is nice, but because I'm not in school anymore, Apple Pencil has lost a lot of its utility in my life, and it makes me feel like it's because I have it, I'm trying to find an excuse to using it. So then buyer's remorse kicks in, and it's always made me want to simply go back to a proper laptop. However, I can't help but think that this could be a great tool for monitoring our shoots. If you don't have cellular, connecting into a hotspot is really easy. We were able to use it with Notion to load our shots on it, monitor some of the clips we were taking, take some photos, overall use it for the behind the scenes of our videos. So that was pretty much our Wednesday. You know, when you truly use tech, like when you take things out for a spin, you try to integrate them into your everyday life, it puts things into perspective. It allows you to discover things that needed to be experienced in order for you to talk about them. This week, for example, on Thursday, one of those revelations for me was the ability to use this within my desk setup at home. I just recently got an OLED monitor that's paired with a whole sound setup and peripherals, all docked with the help of a BenQ dock. And so with one single Thunderbolt 4 cable, just like my MacBook, I can very much connect all of this and modify the display to the way I really want it to be. So I can sit here, reply to emails, watch videos, take calls if I need to, plan my week in business with Notion. I can do all the basic admin work I need to do when I'm at home. There are minor things I did miss, like, I don't know, hovering over the player and being able to skim footage through the timeline while on YouTube, or simply opening a Chrome tab and being able to start typing right away like on a laptop. The bigger stuff though, like coding, that's what kills me on this. Some people try their best to use GitHub code spaces, which seems to be good, and I tried it until the minimized keyboard menu got on my way from further interacting with the terminal, and until it became impossible to reopen localhost 3000 to play within apps. So this is where iPad just starts to crumble bit by bit for me. I've tried in the past to use VSCode.dev as a workaround tool to pull projects from my own personal repo to work on them, but the issue is that sometimes browser shortcuts override VS Code shortcuts, the terminal isn't available within this app, some extensions like C++ won't work on iPad. I think the ability to code and compile, manage your files through a complete file manager, and being able to natively SSH into other devices is just not possible, and it's not there in my opinion. As for my other workflow, this week I did set this up for DaVinci because I do want to bring this with me to our upcoming Taiwan trip. Setting DaVinci on iPad was surprisingly very smooth and very easy, and for us that included being able to connect to our local server where all of our collaborated projects and footage lives, being able to easily import our LUT within the iPad to use it for our color grading, and being able to import our custom keyboard presets, which 99% of them work well on DaVinci. I did run into a little tiny issue where I couldn't make some of the shortcuts work because of the way they map on a laptop, but eventually I figured it out and remapped it accordingly to what we have on our own PCs.
I'm kind of falling in love with the iPad Pro. It's not a full replacement to the MacBook Air, but think about it as an alternative to the Air. I feel like the iPad adds experiences that you didn't know you sort of needed or wanted, in a good and a bad way. Like for example, for coding, it really doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't work for coding, not at all. Like I don't need to find ways to troubleshoot how to get my coding done when I already have to troubleshoot code by itself. I feel like at home when I'm coding, I just want peace of mind and just get some coding done and not have to troubleshoot the device I'm trying to work in. So other than that, all of my workflow, all the systems I've implemented this past year, because iPadOS, let's be honest, iPadOS hasn't evolved that much through the past year, but my workflow has evolved to the point that, you know, I've brought DaVinci into our system at the office, and DaVinci works really well on the iPad. So now combining that, okay, my life with the portability that this device offers, and you know, as much as I hate that the pen sort of falls super, like look at this, I don't know. Anyways, as much as I hate that, cutting weight compared to the MacBook Air, even though the MacBook Air is super light, but cutting weight compared to my 15-inch is very interesting. It's an interesting alternative. I really like it. And I'm not gonna add the battery life because I'm just gonna repeat myself and repeat other people. It's good, it's great, it's amazing, we get it, haha. This is interesting. I like it.
I think for most people, iPad really is like a yin and yang, and that's the battle you go through as you use this for your everyday life. Google Apps, for example. I always recommend using native Google Apps that the App Store delivers. Google Docs is solid, it's not laggy at all. The tools you need to get up and running are very much available to you, and working offline compared to on macOS delivers a much better experience in my opinion. The only apps I don't use much at all anymore are like Office 365 apps. From what I've heard though, and I've been reading online, they are still till this day very limited. A lot of people either give up on their iPad transition when it comes to Office apps, or just use the iPad to create rough drafts and they finalize them at home on a laptop. It's not ideal, but that's the nature of it. That doesn't take away from its ability to easily multitask, whether you want to resize your windows, take advantage of the app shelf as you use Freeform or even Word, or slide over an app if that's what you need. All of that can be done within its display, or if you want, within your desk setup monitor. Although on Saturday we did watch Messi play and we streamed the whole game on my LG TV. Incredible, because I think the iPad only dropped about 1% or so after streaming the whole game and more. Look, the entire week I've been using this as much as I could. During our voiceovers, during our car shoots this week, controlling our automation at home or at the office, and even scanning my receipts for accounting, which is now powered by AI, which is even freaking easier. And so as my week progressed, I had my fighting rounds with it. Not being able to customize my MX Master shortcuts was one of them. And so it's not about the iPad needing more in performance, but it's more about the iPad needing more freedom. We all know that the biggest downside of the iPad has been the lack of software. It is getting closer to a laptop, but for a lot of people, it's just not there yet. iPad makes for good laptop alternatives, like I said, but not for proper laptop replacements. And that's what I've gone through this week, and what I'll probably go through the next few weeks as I keep giving it a try. Notice how I didn't talk much about the new OLED screen. As nice as it is, really, compared to other iPad Pros, it hasn't really brought anything new to the table for me. Yes, I've noticed it can indeed get brighter at times, but other than that, the experience is very much the same. I think my goal is to stick with this as much as I possibly can and come back to you guys. Let me know down below whether or not you would or wouldn't want to switch to an iPad. I'm curious to know your answers. That being said, I hope you like this video. I do need to go finish our car shoot, so I'll leave you guys with this. Talk soon, guys, and take care.